Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. I'm Claudia Chiappa. I'm a health reporter here at Politico. Today, we're kicking off the afternoon with an interview with the European Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness, and Crisis Management, Lahbib. Join me in welcoming her on stage. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Claudia.
Of course. Europe is facing multiple threats at once. There are war raging at its borders, bird flu outbreaks, rising rates of vector-borne diseases and infectious diseases, which are also driven by climate change, antimicrobial resistance, and I could probably sit here and name about 100 more, but I won't. But all of this while we're also still reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're looking at the multiple fronts on which Europe has to be ready today, I would like to start our discussion in diving into our state of preparedness with kind of a question to assess where we are today. Let's say tomorrow we unfortunately have another pandemic and we get another bad news. Is Europe ready as it is right now to face another health threat, or will we be in the same situation than we were when COVID-19 happened?
This is a very good question. Thank you for asking it. Indeed, the question is not if another pandemic or outbreak will happen, but when. This is really the assessment of the scientific world. And we have all still in mind the very early months of the COVID-19, when we saw hospitals overwhelmed with facing shortages, member states competing to find masks, discovering that we don't have a supply chain, and a lot of misinformation. So from this time, we are investing in preparedness. So we are far from this time, fortunately, and the best evidence is that I'm here as the first preparedness commissioner. And so during the COVID-19 in 2019, we didn't have a legal framework that allows us to act faster, but we have it now. We have what we call the emergency framework regulation, ensuring that vital medical countermeasures are available, manufactured, and also distributed quickly and fairly across all the member states in case of emergency. So what does it mean very concretely? If the emergency framework regulatory is activated by the member states under proposal from the Commission, it means that HERA, which is the Health Emergency Response Authority that was created after the COVID-19, and this is also one of the best proof that we are investing in preparedness, we switch on what we call the emergency mode. And a board, a health crisis board, is established within the HERA authority, and this board is tasked to take the decision together with the member states and to coordinating to avoid duplication and to distribute fairly and quickly all the medical countermeasures that are needed across the member states. So first, we have this board, which is created. Second, we assess the supply and the demands across the member states under the regulations. The companies can be required to provide information on their production capacity, the stocks that they have, the stock level, the supply chains, and so on. And then, when we have this first assessment, we can launch joint procurement. On behalf of the member states, the EU can negotiate better terms, of course, and ensure access for all the 27 and to produce at large scale. And for that, we can activate also the emergency manufacturing network, which is EU fab network capable to deliver up to more than 300 million doses of vaccine and 160 million within the 6 months. So you see, we have a lot of capacities, and of course, we have EU fab that are located in member states. It's mainly in Belgium, the Netherlands, in Spain and Ireland. And again, we want to ensure a fair and coordinated distribution of the medical countermeasure. And before a crisis hits, we ensure a monitoring of the wastewater. For instance, we have wastewater surveillance capacities, and we invest also on the research and development to be sure that we have the vaccines that are needed in times of crisis.
So a lot of new mechanisms that after COVID-19 are now ready to be deployed if something were to happen. And thank you for also bringing up, obviously, when we're talking about preparedness, it's about the entire pipeline, right? You start with surveillance, research and development, you have to have the countermeasures, and then you have to distribute them, and you have to keep in mind equity of distribution. Where do you think there are Europe's biggest vulnerabilities, perhaps right now in this pipeline? Are there some areas where HERA and the Commission is focusing on filling gaps?
Yeah, we are working. It's an ongoing process. We launched a preparedness strategy in March, a couple of months ago, and the first deliverable is a stockpiling strategy focusing on medical countermeasure. Why? Because if we want to be sure that we have the good medical countermeasures and therapeutics and vaccines in our member states, we have to have a better understanding of which country has what, in which capacities, you know, and for this assessment, we need to build trust and to have a good understanding. And for that, we developed a roadmap, first to help the member states to identify what they have and to communicate. We need to build trust, of course. I remember this is the first thing that Niinisto, the previous president from Finland, who prepared, you know, the Niinisto report, which inspired our preparedness strategy. He told me, Aja, you have everything you need, but you need to have a better coordination and you need to build trust within our European and among our member states. So we want to focus on the actual stock. What do we have? And to avoid duplication, because at the end we don't want to end with too much masks and no vaccines, for instance. And so we will have this assessment. It's coming. It's under development. We hope that we will launch it at the end of the year. And in parallel, we are developing what we call the MCM Accelerator. It will be launched before the end of the year to boost innovation and development of vaccines and therapeutics. And we will focus on key 4 areas: respiratory and contact-based virus, vector-borne and zoonotic disease, antimicrobial resistance, and CBRN threats. And the other gaps that I identify is the need to train, to have more exercise, because you can have the best strategy. If we don't put it into practice before the crisis hits, we are not going to be well prepared. So more exercise, more cooperation, coordination is really key. And I was in Finland, in Oulu, a couple of weeks ago, where we had a Borealis exercise, putting together Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Germany in a worst scenario crisis. It was a Siberian attack, and we had to identify what was, the attack? Was it chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear? We put together, more than 1,000 people in different capacities, to evacuate, to detect the threats, to monitor, to treat the patients, and all these things. And we discovered, for instance, I was there, but I'm still waiting for the global conclusions, that the most difficult things was we had in our stockpile what we call the personal protection items, but it was very difficult for the workers to take off the protection personal, items without contaminating themselves. So this is a very practical thing that we need to train and to be able to react very fast and in case of crisis. But if we are losing hours, and contaminating all each other while doing these very easy things, apparently easy, then we are going to lose a very crucial hours.
So yes, and the details that you wouldn't know probably, that this is the most complicated part of it if you weren't doing the exercises. A lot that you talked about that I would like to touch on. I'm going to stay a little bit longer on this exercise because that it sounds very interesting. So, for example, in Finland, this exercise, what are some kind of like, how was the coordination? How do you bring together everybody to do the evacuation? What are some things that you observed maybe in that sense? How much is also the civil-military cooperation a key role in this, in bringing together preparedness and then distribution?
A preparedness strategy is based on all of society, all of government, all hazards. So we need to put together all the different authorities, institutions, but also the civilians. It starts from the very local authorities and it ends up to the European Commission, acting as an umbrella to have a better understanding of the global picture. And what we ECHO, which is under my remit, started only to combat wildfires, floods, but it's not anymore only wildfires. It's not only more floods. We know that we could have a cascading effect, domino impact. Floods can end with the outbreak of cholera, for instance. So this domino impact needs to be addressed in a very holistic manner. And that's why we need to have a comprehensive understanding and also a very strong cooperation at every level.
The other element when we're talking about cooperation is trust. You mentioned how important it is, particularly when we're talking about issues like stockpiling. You mentioned where there is the need to assess what stocks countries have, but this can be quite controversial maybe for some countries. I know some member states are a bit skeptic when it comes to sharing their stocks. So how do you build that trust? Have you noticed a lot of already issues in perhaps collecting these numbers, and how are the Commission thinking of bridging that gap?
You point the finger on a very sensitive issue indeed, because we should never forget that the first answer should always come from the member states. So this is their sovereign competence to protect their own citizens. But the lessons learned from the COVID-19 is that we are not all protected until everyone is protected. So it's, I mean, until everybody is protected, you can have all the stockpiles that you need, your own country. If your neighbor doesn't have the same capacities to defend and to stop an outbreak of a virus, the virus will not ask the permission to contaminate and to cross the border. So that's what we call the cross-border impact. And for that, we need to have a good assessment, because you know that we have stockpiling strategy. We have stockpiles, which is part of our rescue capacities. It started with a water pump, Canadair, but now we have CBRN. items. And we are going to launch a new stockpiling on CBRN to cover all the risks. And for that, we need to have a good assessment of what are the capacities. Otherwise, we will have stockpiles that are useless. Because if we have, for instance, a lot of masks or test capacities, trials, and you have it, for your neighbor and for 3 countries, then it's useless. So that's why we need to have this assessment. It's key.
Yeah.
It's a question of security.
Still on the topic of trust, I would like to, just because I understand we're already almost running out of time, move to the topic a bit of trust when it comes to global health. So trust also means trust in the countermeasures that we build. And I think we are living in a moment where I think a lot of people in this room and in the work in health particularly understand that there is a bit of a growing skepticism towards vaccines, countermeasure, and in general, public health and public health institutions and authorities. How much is fighting health disinformation and building trust with the people also part of health security and your mandate?
Yeah, we all remember also the disinformation, the conspiracy theories, the false claims during the COVID-19. And we really have to fight to come back, because this leads to the polarization and distrust also of our public opinion. So, to build trust among our citizens is as important as stockpiling strategy. Because indeed, again, you can have the best strategy, the best stockpiles, and the best therapeutics, the best vaccines in the world. If the people don't trust you, they will not accept to be vaccinated. And this is something that we faced very recently when there were an outbreak, Mpox outbreak in Congo, DRC, and Rwanda. Thanks to Team Europe approach and thanks to our strong collaboration with Africa CDC and WHO, we were able, within the 3 weeks after the outbreak was declared by WHO, to deliver vaccines. But then there were this narrative that the vaccine was an attempt to the fertility of the African people coming from, and that's why we need to invest on local partners. Africa CDC, we have an agreement with them. We also invest on public advocacy, civil society. We were in contact with priests, for instance. And we are working also with a global partnership with Africa CDC, with PAHO when it comes to Latin American countries, to be sure that they have the capacity to produce. So this is not us delivering vaccines to these hard-to-reach areas, for instance, or to African countries, but it's a real collaboration. And this is a strong contribution for trust, for building trust.
Still, to build trust, one of the things that Ursula von der Leyen said during the State of the Union address this year was that the Commission is coming out with a global health resilience initiative. We don't know much about it, so we'd love to hear from you, if there is any more information on what we can expect from it. I think it's expected at some point like next year. So how much of it will be on this information? What else will be tackled by this initiative, and what can we expect from it?
But you know that unfortunately some major actors and partners are turning inward and disinvesting and withdrawing from big actors like WHO. And much of the world nowadays is looking to Europe for leadership. And this is, I can assure you that this is the message that I received when I was in Berlin a couple of days ago at the World Health Summit. And I think that Europe's investment is at the same time a moral duty, but also a strategic investment and a strategic interest. And this reflects also the EU's deep commitment to strengthen global health security. We have a lot of new partnership, bilateral, be it with Canada, with Japan, with Korea, and also with institutions like, I quote, I said it, PAHO, for Latin American countries in the margin of CELAC. I was in Colombia, in Bogota, and in Santa Marta, where I signed a couple of days ago an administrative agreement on research and development, on partnership, on monitoring the viruses, across Latin American countries. And we have the same with Africa CDC. And these partnerships allow us to have this global health resilience system that give us a global picture of the threats, the risks, and how can we respond all together by joining our forces, our capacities. And again, what is important is that we invest in sovereign capacity building. The global south is an actor rather than, we want to move from traditional donor and recipient to, a real partnership.
So it sounds like it's the core of this global resilience initiative built in partnerships with other actors and in kind of assessing how we can work together is it for surveillance? Is there going to be money tied to it? Are there concrete other initiatives coming out of it, or is it more about just these partnerships?
Yeah, I give you an example. There is, for instance, for the moment, an outbreak in Ethiopia of Marburg, which is a dangerous virus with a high rate fatality, and that can very rapidly widespread as well. So we are waiting for the Ethiopian Ministry of Health to give us the green light to develop, to help them to develop with WHO and Africa CDC one of the 4 vaccines that are under research. They are not clinical approved for the moment. They are still, they still need to be approved, but it is under clinical trials. So we can launch these clinical trials all together to have this Marburg response. But so we are acting together. Of course, we can invest money, and next week we are going to invest also 30 million in a workshop, but through HERA, to develop CBRN response capacities. And so we are acting at all levels. It's within the European Union, but it's much more wider, of course, because health is a global issue.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. That is all the time that we have, unfortunately, but this was a great discussion, so thank you so much for joining us. A round of applause for the Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay.
So one of my favorite little factoids about Commissioner Lahbib is that in a previous life, she was a journalist, so never know what could be next. But the other thing that she has clearly learned is how to talk with crisp examples, and I loved that story that she told about the crisis exercise that everybody did, and they discovered that, they just weren't trained to take off their protective equipment properly and quickly. And so much of our discussion today is about money, about drug prices, about funding for various innovation projects and that sort of thing. It was a great reminder that a lot of preparedness and citizens' health is based on human resources and other things that can't be measured in euros. And that really helps set the scene for our next discussion, health security, being prepared. And before we get into that, I'm gonna do a little bit of reporting here. I'm gonna put somebody on the spot. Anna Maria, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Tell us who you are, and what in your view is the next health crisis that Europe should be prepared for?
Yes, Anna Maria Corca, today with the Pandemic Action Network. So when we want to build a strong house, We want this house to look great, to be solid, but we cannot leave like our roof with a hole, you know, and have leaks all the time, because we want to innovate in this house, we want to be competitive. So I think biosecurity is something very, very important that we have to consider. It shouldn't be very easy to order fragments of Ebola online. So let's make it a bit harder. So that's my one point to think about.
Okay, ordering Ebola online, that sounds pretty scary. Let's hope that our next set of oh, I'm not supposed to be using both microphones, I'm sorry. Let's hope that our next set of experts can tackle that, from bird flu outbreaks to war on the continent. This next conversation gets right to the heart of Europe's resilience and sovereignty. Stick around as the next speakers make their way to the stage.